everybody. Thanks for joining us today. So often in craft beer professionals, we talk about the brewing side of the industry, but the whole industry couldn't go around without, all the great folks in packaging as well. So I'm excited to have a conversation today, about that side of the industry. And a huge thank you to our partner, the Craft Beverage Expo and Distribution Center. They helped put together this panel today. We're really looking forward to it. And their website is craftbeverageexpo.com. You can learn more. You can register for their upcoming events and webinars. They've got a really big event coming up March 9th and 10th. And normally I don't talk much about myself, but I'll actually be presenting there. So if you want to come join us, I'll be talking about adapted engagement, understanding taproom, tasting room customers, changing expectations. I can't wait to be there virtually. It's going to be a really fun time. Hopefully we're back in person next year. But now we're going to talk a little bit about packaging in the craft beer industry and how it's changed, during the pandemic. I mean, what a year it's been. It's really hard to believe that we've been going at this nearly a year now. But I've got 4 great guests today. Greg, let's start with you. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
So Greg Lovensheimer, I'm Executive Vice President, Chief Operating Officer of Millcraft Paper. We're a 100-year-old, 4th-generation, family-run paper and packaging company based out of the Ohio Valley. So been a home brewer for about 25 years, and I get to live vicariously through all my customers.
I absolutely love it. What do you got brewing right now, Greg?
I call it Tropic Thunder. It's a hazy IPA, Mosaic, El Dorado hops.
Have you found yourself brewing more or less through the pandemic?
I brewed a lot last year. I did a wine, a mead. I did wine, mead, and 3 beers. And then it was like, okay, then I was overloaded in alcohol, had to back off. Still working off
that. Joel, you're up. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, hi. I'm Joel Miller, President, CEO of Phoenix Packaging. I've been Chief Cook and Bottle Washer for roughly 27 years. We focus mainly on finding unique solutions to packaging issues and giving people different opportunities, whether it be glass, plastic, ceramics. Unfortunately, we avoid the soft stuff. So no cans, no pouches.
Well, appreciate you joining today. And I know off air you were sharing that you're somewhere exciting right now. Where are you interrupting your vacation to join this conversation from?
I wish I could say it was a vacation, but I am up at Mont Tremblant, Quebec, and been trying to squeeze in a little bit of skiing in between the work and the calls and all these different conferences and video calls.
No, thanks for being here today. Thanks. And enjoy the slopes when you get back out after this.
Well, depends on the time.
Harrison, thanks for joining us. Tell everybody else watching a little bit about what you do in the industry.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Hello, everyone. My name is Harrison Chen. I'm the Executive Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Weber Packaging Solutions. We're a privately owned 80-plus-year-old company that focuses on printing labels, developing labeling systems, and inkjet. And our primary markets are food and beverage, e-commerce, logistics, also the chemicals market and medical as well. So we are based in the Chicago area, and we are just starting to thaw out. Knock on wood.
Well, good luck and keep doing your best to stay safe and stay warm.
Yeah,
Michael, you got the rockin' headset for anyone who's going to be listening later and can't see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, no doubt. So again, Mike Seitz, sales director for Saxco. And I've been in the packaging business for almost my entire career. Started with a company called OI 25 years ago, and continued in the packaging business. I think what's great about packaging is, frankly, we're the delivery vessel for all these great products in the industry. Happy to say, while I'm not a home brewer, I'm a home consumer, right? So big fan of lots of beers, but I'm an IPA guy. So again, happy to be here representing Saxco, where we package customers' dreams.
Awesome. I love that little tagline you've got there. Now, before we dive into a whole bunch about packaging, I want to talk to the 4 of you a little bit about your experiences during the pandemic. In a past world, in a past life, and we'll get to some sort of normalcy eventually, craft beer is so much about relationships. Brewers like forming relationships with people they want to have a beer with. That's literally what it comes down to. They want to spend their money with the guys, girls, and whoever who they want to just sit down and hang out with and talk beer about, because that's what we love about this industry. So I can imagine through the past, year of just the current world we're living in, it's been quite challenging for you to reach brewers. I'd love to hear about How has your company been able to successfully build these relationships even during a pandemic?
Yeah, I'll take a first stab at that. I think, you're spot on. And I'll say beyond the relationships, it's really about, being a steward in the market, or a steward in the environment, in which these brewers operate, right, live, and share their products. We saw a big shift early on, right, when the pandemic hit. It's like, okay, these brewers' businesses were impacted. They were shutting down, but we saw a big shift of brewers and others in the marketplace shifting gears and producing hand sanitizers in the marketplace, right? Saying, hey, we've got this filling line. We know how to produce alcohol. We can use that for hand sanitizer. We saw brewers stepping up, moving into that arena, right? As things then began to open up. Again, we found creative ways to connect with those people, whether it was online, right? However we could, right, to maintain that relationship. And, we found ourselves pivoting with the brewers, as they were finding their way in this marketplace.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. What about the rest of it? Go ahead, Greg.
Point, we've had relationships with a lot of our craft brewery partners, craft cocktail partners even.
Yes.
And we're one of North America's largest distributors of PakTech candles. So we were getting routine phone calls, and we were blessed enough that when brewers were experiencing the full-fledged of the pandemic, we were getting calls saying, "Can you help me find?" And so that was the advantage. That was the opportunity for us to say, "Okay, we may not currently stock these products or have these, but we're going to add them to the lineup so that we can be fewer touch points for our customers, right? So that they can get more things in fewer transactions and have a lower risk profile, so that there's one truck showing up that's got cans and chemicals and labels and PakTechs and trays, the whole 9 yards in one vessel." So that's how we pivoted. We dramatically expanded our product line, almost what felt like overnight, at least to our CFO.
What are some of the items that you added to your mix?
Chemicals. We got into chemicals in a very large way. We had a can business, but it was kind of fairly small, and we rapidly kicked it up as obviously, everyone felt the kegs to can movement, and we call it the candemic. Everyone's out looking for cans, and we realized early on, if we're going to be able to help our partners stay alive, we got to help them get cans, because the only way they're getting product to market is through that can.
Yeah. Now, Greg, you bring up a great point, right? As the brewers were pivoting, right, they were looking for alternative packaging. You mentioned the candemic, which we're all aware of, but they were in need of. We were seeing some of these brewers look for formerly spirits packaging, right? They were looking for PET containers that normally would be a flask. They were using those for hand sanitizers. We were seeing all kinds of pivots in the marketplace, and to your point, it was driving some new opportunities for us, right? But some creativity along the way, and really just building on those relationships that we've already had established.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joel.
So from our perspective, it was just continuing the flexibility and the resources that we have at our fingertips to be able to turn and say something that we're already supplying to, whether it was pharmaceutical companies or to personal care companies, and easily being able to flip it and say, okay, yeah, here we've got a supply of this. It can suit a separate purpose and be able to handle hand sanitizers, disinfectants. And not just a question of, okay, here's something small. It turned out a lot of them were looking for industrial size containers, not usually the smaller packaging. For us, it was just part of our normal thing. It was just a question of we're selling it to a customer who previously hadn't bought that type of packaging.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great opportunity too to really thank our sales and marketing groups. I mean, the amount of changes in check adjusting that they had to do, to accommodate the way that they communicate to customers really turned on itself. And so I think for us, being in the label printing market, the graphics part of our industry was a critical piece, communicating, those brands and producing those labels. That was something that we were very fortunate having digital, presses capability to be able to make changes very, very quickly. And so, the other part, like Greg mentioned, we shifted a little bit more into the e-commerce and logistics, side of the business. We saw that really taking off, and we're also doing a lot of barcoding integration work. So that was a good fit for us as well.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Harrison. And Mike, you had mentioned things like hand sanitizer. I know we saw so many breweries and distillers pivot to that early in the pandemic. Were they reaching out for you for their packaging needs on that one? And if so, are you still seeing them reach out for products like that in the PPE space?
No, it's so interesting. Yes. So we had an incredible pivot back when the pandemic first hit. Yeah, as we all know, hand sanitizer was a scarcity. So we absolutely had a spike in demand for packaging related to that, and it was any and all packaging, whatever could be used. As I said, we saw an awful lot of like 375 ml flasks, 200 ml flasks that traditionally were oriented in the spirits category. We saw that pivot and being used kind of across the board, but certainly, I'll say 6 months into the pandemic, there was definitely availability of hand sanitizer, retail and across the board. Consumers were able to get their hands on that. So that kind of, I'll say, died maybe after the first 6 months, right? And we saw a shift away from that. I would agree with what Greg said, as a result of the increase in retail consumption of, beer and other products, cans have become the new challenge, right? So the availability of cans and the products that go with that have been a big challenge. So frankly, we've spent a lot of our energy sourcing globally, frankly, to ensure that we've got availability for our partners in the marketplace. So that really has been a big focus, I'll say, over the course of the last 6 to 9 months.
And with regard to all the breweries that you all have worked with, we've seen such drastic changes in the landscape of craft beer the past year. I mean, you've seen the tap rooms open, the closures, the opening, the closures. It's been an ongoing cycle of that, kind of diving further into the unknown.
Yes.
Looking back last year when we first hit the pandemic in March, if someone had told you we'll still be dealing with it in September, you might not have believed them. You might have said, "Oh yeah, we'll be out of this by then." But the funny thing is now, if I told you, guess where we'll be in September, October, we really don't know. While we want things, we want to be hopeful that things are getting better. There's so much unknown, and I feel being hopeful is the best we can do. But there's that still sense of not knowing what the next day is going to bring, and that goes for so many of the breweries that I'm sure many of you work with. I mean, think about the taproom culture that the industry has built over the past few years. Just small town brewery tap rooms that really just attract their local audience and really had no distribution footprint at that point in time. Have the four of you seen those smaller breweries start to reach out to you through this?
Well, we've seen I guess a pattern that we would have expected from smaller brewers, which was really to be saying, okay, we can't distribute, we can't sell the way we did previously. How can we still supply our customers? So in certain jurisdictions, they were able to sell way out their back door. It was sort of a pickup service rather than worrying about people who were delivering or being able to offer stuff out of a tap room.
Yeah, I would echo what Joel said in terms of pickup out of the back room, helping customers be able to pivot to say Saturday mornings, they've got a drive-through set up and they've got little tents outside, and and again, that's part of that crush of cans of everyone's trying to get them in so that they get a drive-through service going, and and a lot of times the communities have been wonderful in supporting their craft brew partners, right? And they've really stepped up, and we had several breweries say they were sold out by 2 p.m. And again, that's the wonderful following that a lot of our customers get in the craft beer space is. They truly do develop that local passion that people want to get it. They just got to be able to get that product accessible to them.
Right. Yeah. We always said that the local craft brewers connected with their consumers through the tap handles, right? And because of the pandemic, they've had to find new ways to maintain that connectivity, and whether it's growlers, crowlers, just a 12, a 16 ounce, whatever that vessel is, we've actually seen some, I'll call it special packaging, where they don't have access to crowlers or growlers, right? Because that market is tight. They're taking other containers and packaging them right out of the tap handle, right? Putting them in 4 or 6 packs and selling them out, like you said, out the back door, or on the patio with an igloo or a tent, right? Where they're trying to keep people warm and maintain some level of consistency, if that could be used. But we've seen quite a variety of shifts from that tap handle to some form of packaging.
Yeah, it was almost a recognition of, almost from state to state, because of the regulatory differences within each state of how open restaurants could be during this time period. At least now we're starting to see that playing field even out a little bit more. As an example, just in the city of Chicago, we just opened restaurants to 25% capacity just a couple of weeks ago. Where other states in the United States had been open, for a majority of that time. So I think it was really state dependent.
One of the areas that we tried to help customers pivot is, again, a lot of our customers said they wanted to be as efficient as possible. They wanted to get the biggest quantity of beer and the smallest amount of packaging they could possibly, so crowlers were very big. And so we got to the point where we were able to leverage, we have a mobile canning business that we acquired during the pandemic as a way to help us pivot. We were actually pre-labeling crowlers to help brewers out so that they didn't have to waste time labeling after they filled them. So we're able to actually label the empty can just to get it so that they could be in a much more serviceable position kind of at that tap handle when they were able to open up for those brief periods for drop-in traffic.
Let's talk about formats for a minute. We've heard a lot in the news about how the larger formats, we're seeing them much more, especially in like all the retail outlets that you can pick up a 12-pack of your local flagship or the national flagship or whatever it may be. And looking at the data, while the number of larger formats out in the market are a little bit higher, I don't think the numbers are dramatic. In the 4 of your experiences, what packaging sizes are you seeing to be most popular in the current state of the world?
Obviously, we're seeing, a ton of demand still in the 12 and 16 ounce, what I would call kind of mainstream for obvious brewers, if you will. But I mentioned growlers, right? So whether it's 32 ounce, 64 ounce, we're still seeing high demand there. But, we frankly have seen situations where people will take what we have, right? Whatever is available is frankly the hottest item right now.
You're exactly right, Mike. They just want to know, what can I get in the quantities I need?
Yeah, exactly.
And
I would echo Mike's comments. The 12 and 16 ounce market is still the primary for us.
Yeah.
Well, we saw a lot of customers pivot away from, obviously they had to, from printed cans, right?
Right.
And then even sleeved cans, because no one wanted to invest that much inventory in that big of a product. So
right.
Print on demand labels, a lot of short runs labels, labels that look like bright cans, so that it looks more aesthetically pleasing. That's what we've seen is the bigger format, in terms of trying to make the best of the situation. Metallic labels, full size, make it pop on the store shelf.
Yeah, and Andrew, interestingly, we've actually taken some bets and we've brought in some kind of non-standard cans, if you will. So there's standards, there's sleeks. We've bought some slenders, which are kind of, I call it, they're the hybrid, right? They're somewhere in between, and they were available. We brought them in, and we're actually moving some of those cans where somebody frankly just has a need. Right, and they can retrofit a filling line fairly quickly, right? And it's something that's available. So, we've seen creativity in the market for sure.
Oh, fascinating. Now, we had a comment about the pandemic, the potential aluminum shortage. What are your projections on when we're going to get through that? Any insider information?
I think for us, hopefully never, but I think we're hearing that it's going to remain tight, into next year. I think it's anybody's guess as states and local, regulations change and things, quote, open up. I foresee that as a slow kind of walking back to some new normal. I don't think we'll see 2019 again, right, where things are kind of completely open. I think we'll see some new norm going forward. So I foresee tightness in the market for another 12 to 18 months anyhow. I don't know what others foresee.
Yeah. When you're talking about aluminum cans, no doubt. If you're talking aluminum bottles, it's not as tight. There's a lot more, but the price points are very different. It's a much more expensive item. But that there's ready, easily achievable supply. But it's we're talking a different process, and not everyone's equipped or wants to head down that route. Obviously, aluminum is one story. The material in itself is readily available, but it's the production of cans that's really backlogged. And it's not just North America. You've seen the same things in Europe and in Asia at this point in time. That compounded with tariffs being brought into, it just makes things to the point where you can't move anything forward in a reasonable way. And it's not to say that glass is any better at this point. A lot of issues with glass factories, whether it's been COVID related, whether it's been rebuilds of furnaces and factories, or if you're looking at bringing stuff in from overseas, there are issues with shipping. So we're talking everything from logistics, container shortages, backlogs at both East Coast and West Coast ports. When you're talking about COVID and or truckers to unload and then deliver, you've got backlogs of a week to 2 weeks on the West Coast and closing in on a week on the East Coast for anything that's inbound. So it's just complicating everything even more.
Yeah, I think our view, Andrew, is we don't anticipate the can shortage lifting anytime until probably 2023. There's a lot of North American capacity coming online, but a lot of it's already sold out. There's whether it's the Ball plant that's going out in Arizona, and you got the Red Bull plant going right next door to it, right? So it's a lot of compartmentalizing right there. So while the numbers look like there's volume coming online, again, the consumption continues to go up. We've placed some very large bets, kind of like Mike's team at Saxco. We put a lot of investment, not only North American sources of supply, but we really had to go globally, and we've had to go in a big way. And the container shortage and inbound shipping and freight lines, it's all been a little bit of a cluster. I know we get some customers get frustrated with us because we can tell them, hey, we placed the order. We placed an order in October that should have been in by December, maybe January, and we still haven't received a third of it. And you get customers saying, but you said, and I'm like, yeah, but here's the backlog. So we've had to go, you had to double down, right? And so what you thought you were going to have invested in inventory, you've had to go 3x that just to get yourself by. And now, and to a degree, that's why we're bullish on the fact that it's going to be a while before the market really returns. So you better have as many sources of supply as you can get your hands on.
Yeah. No, I think the key point there is it used to be a national sourcing kind of opportunity, if you will, and it's changed. The market has changed completely in the United States to it's a global sourcing solution. And if you want reliable or availability of supply, you've got to be open to global sourcing options, and those come with some complexity. And Greg mentioned it. Joel also mentioned it. The inbound freight complications, whether it be from the cost, the congestion at ports, availability of containers, right? It is very complex. It's hard to plan against. So, if there was an ask of the marketplace, be patient, right? We're all working for the same solution. It's a challenging market right now.
And Mike, you mentioned looking outside the country to build relationships. Are these relationships you had with other suppliers prior to the pandemic, or did you have to forge these relationships, when COVID hit?
It's a little of both. It's we historically have been global sourcing experts, if you will, and we continue to expand that. And this is no different, but it's caused us to pivot a bit, but it's expanding on the capabilities that we have. And I'd say a little combination of both, building out relationships that we've had and finding new ones every day.
Yeah, it's something that we've done. Sorry.
Go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, just as Mike has said, for us, we're in a similar position. We run in some similar lanes, for us, the whole company was built on global sourcing, and it's the reason why we've had the flexibility and been able to avoid many of the pitfalls that others have, is because we've had resources and not just relying on, one or two main markets or three markets as most people have, which is North America, Europe, mainly Western Europe and Asia. We've been able to, as we've already had relationships stretching out well beyond those three main areas, which has helped our clientele.
Now, we mentioned earlier just innovative, like, packaging with regard to maybe different sizes or slender bottles, something outside of the normal 12 or 16 ounce. Have the four of you seen this as an opportunity that brewers have grasped onto to take advantage of these unique items and turn it into a positive?
I'd say to a certain extent, yes. The problem is the turnaround timeline on being able to make some of these happen. If you look at a glass bottle, we've been able to create things from, as small as a 50 ml to as big as a 30 liter. But it's not everyone that wants that, and it takes time in terms of having tooling made, manufacturing, and then shipping. So while it may lead to opportunities down the road if certain things are continued, and it provides clients with unique ways of presenting and selling their product separate of their previous channels, then yeah, there may be something that's there. And it really comes down to which direction do brewers want to go in. Do they want to really still, go and say, okay, smaller guys and more tap rooms, that's the way to go? Or is it going to be packaging in some sort which allows for, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's traditional distribution models, each one has a different way of being marketed.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of beverage producers trying to maximize their message, in the marketplace. Meaning, historically they may have had a pack tech and worry about their labels and make sure their labels are facing out. Now, because that may be the only touch point they get with their customer base, they're looking at every surface area that they can possibly get their hands on. And so we've had several customers, try this little where they're putting a label. There's a BevCom label that we sell that has gone on very well. You can do cross-branded marketing or cause marketing. Again, it's a high visibility because you're putting your fingers there. As you pick it up, as you put it in, as you put it in the fridge, you take it out, as you go to recycle it. It's that high touch point. And we found a lot of partners say, okay, if I've got a beer, I'm going to cross market my seltzer. If I got a seltzer, I'm going to cross brand my IPA. So again, because they're getting fewer kind of touches in the market, how do you expand their message given the amount of real estate that they've already got kind of floating around in the market?
Yeah, and going back to the label appeal, and differentiating in the marketplace, Clemson made had a study a few years back about people buying product because how the label looks, and maybe not even knowing what that product internally tastes or feels like. So, the advantage of digital presses now too is more personalization. Having a more targeted audience and not taking that shotgun approach, but being very, very more focused from a marketing perspective.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, so much has shifted to e-commerce. What tips and advice do you give to the brewers trying to stand out in that market with regard to their packaging, of course?
My advice is stay consistent. If you're seeing it on the shelf or in the tap room, stay consistent online, because I've been involved in some consumer food companies thinking, oh, because it's buying online, we can change or maybe lessen the cost of the packaging because it doesn't have to present itself. I think that's a huge mistake, and some of these companies have suffered because of it. Anytime a package change happens in the consumer market, all of a sudden the first thing people think about is what happened to the actual ingredients in that product. And so I think consistency and maintaining that branding integrity, keep that up.
Yeah, I would agree with Harrison. Is just make sure that your website skin looks like the brands that you have. So hopefully you've got some kind of brand lineage kind of going on that your website now kind of evokes that same brand experience, so that you do trust what you see, and it's not that doesn't look like it comes from that company.
Correct.
Now, Harrison, do you help the companies at all with regard to the overall design, just not just labels, but the overall brand experience?
Yeah, we do. You know, a lot of times it depends, you know, really on how well resourced, you know, our customers are, depending on size and scope. And it is a service that we offer. And sometimes it starts on a napkin, you know, and gets things sketched out, and we kind of blow it up from there. So it just really is very circumstantial, but yes. And a lot of our customers appreciate the fact that we have a full-blown, you know, graphics department.
No, I'm sure that's really valuable. That one-stop shop. I know, Greg, you mentioned you try to be the same with regard to things they can pick up during the pandemic. It's really valuable when you're dealing with less partners.
Yeah, absolutely. Every tap room GM that we talked to just said, I want fewer people walk in the door, fewer people I've got to talk to on the phone, because I've got my time I'm spending. You know, they're now the chief health and safety officer, as well as trying to make sure they're trying to be profitable and understand, you know, are they going to make, you know, money this month or not? So again, they're trying to leverage as much as they can. And so again, that's, you know, at least it's one of the valuable services we believe we provide, is just that you can get as much as you want on that one purchase order, one credit card transaction, or one delivery.
Mm-hmm.
And with regard to just the customer interactions these breweries are having, whether in a tap room or someone purchasing from their online store, the goal for these breweries isn't for that customer to only purchase that 1 4-pack, 6-pack, 12-pack, whatever. They want repeated purchases, and especially during the pandemic when purchases are more intentional, when taproom visits are much more intentional. You know, how can breweries utilize packaging aspect to get more repeat customers? What success stories have you seen with regard to, you know, utilizing the packages as not just that one-time purchase, but getting it as part of that brand experience so people want to come back for more?
Well, one of the things that we've seen and had been doing before is with certain specialty type packs, you can actually have things decorated or done in a way that they're, shall we say, limited editions. They become collectibles. And we've done that a fair amount with some of the ceramic bottles that we sell and supply to breweries. So this way they can come up with a unique piece of artwork, do a limited edition of whether it's 1,000 or 10,000 pieces, and then, okay, a little while later, several months later, move into a different product, but different deco, same package. And they can also promote at the same time the reusability or repurposing of the same package, because these things can be washed and used as, whether it's water bottles, candle holders, you name it, keeps the client's name in front of everyone. And it also speaks to a little bit more of the environmental side of it. And unfortunately, that's one of the things I think that's been brought to more and more people's attention, is the environmental potential causes or things that have led to the pandemic. And the more we keep our eyes and ears open, the more we hear about the downsides of many types of packaging, which is helping to contribute to the environmental, you know, in some ways disaster that we're all facing over the next 15 to 20 years. And, you know, Europe's been well ahead of North America in terms of their thoughts and their attempts to, whether it's to reuse, you know, glass bottles. Germany is a great example in terms of the how they recoup, rewash, reuse bottles. It also helps their glass factories when it comes down to the requirement of, shall we say, cullet, which helps reduce their costs and their energy use in terms of producing new bottles. It's something in North America, while, you know, certain parts of North America have done better jobs than others, as a whole, frankly, we've been operating as a disposable society. Give us something that works, let it do its job once, and we throw it out. And that most so-called recycling programs, blue box, green box, whatever, when you realize that in most jurisdictions, it still goes to landfill. It doesn't help us. It hurts all of us.
So Joel, I want to go back to the ceramic bottles you were talking about, because I had an opportunity to look at your website. They look absolutely phenomenal. Can you explain to everybody exactly what you mean by these ceramic, you know, packaging models you're using?
Yeah, effectively, there's a partner of ours based in Germany who took what was a traditional artisan process, which was sort of a liquid clay poured into plaster of Paris molds, and you wait a period of time. So a very artisanal process. And they found a way to automate it. And they mass produce bottles. In the typical EU standards, their environmental footprint is extensively monitored. They reuse the heats from the kilns to generate energy for the other machinery. They do everything they can to keep the footprint as low as possible. And it's all natural. If someone decides that they're going to throw it out and ends up in a landfill, there's nothing in there that isn't already directly from the earth. It's not as if they're adding chemicals. Even people look at glass bottles and say, okay, yeah, they can be a good thing. But most people don't realize that the external coatings on most of those glass bottles are polymers. It's a plastic.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Designed
to, add strength and prevent scratching and things like that. And more and more you're going to hear about microplastics that are, finding their way into our entire food chain. If they can find microplastics in Antarctica and in the Arctic, it's everywhere. It's I sometimes run into this interesting question when people say, well, what's the most environmental friendly package that you sell? And it's an incredibly loaded question. You can cover and talk about aluminum, which is the most abundant, mineral on the planet, pretty much. But then realize that the cost to extract it, are high. And right now, most of the energy, you talk about the inner lacquers, the coatings on the insides of those cans. And I'm sure you guys are, pitfalls that we all run into, whether it's that or even in paperboard. Of okay, where's the raw paperboard coming from? What trees are the forest being tend? It's a thing that most people have been able to dodge over years, and I think it's going to become more and more.
No, thanks for sharing all that. And for everybody else, I love to hear what you're doing at your companies to be more environmentally conscious and just more sustainable.
Yeah, our suppliers on the paper and film, side of the business is starting to become more and more innovative. As an example, wash away labels. A lot of times containers with labels on them are not recyclable because of the adhesive layer, that's on there. And so there are now label materials out there that with a certain temperature of water and amount of pressure that label just falls right off. And so there's more and more of those where it's, back to the pure plastic or glass without the other contaminants, potentially on there. So that's, from our end, that's where we're seeing more and more products being offered from a recyclability standpoint. And there are compostable products out there as well. Cornstarch-based adhesives, polylactic acids, PLAs. Those have been around for quite a few years, but we're starting to see that those inquiries come more often as well.
Yeah, we've seen these E6 PRs that we distribute. They're becoming popular. The unfortunate thing, they're only becoming popular around breweries that are near waterways. I don't know what it is. I know they've got the seasonal marketing that goes with it, and so they're very big in the Northeast. They're very big along the Great Lakes area, but they're really good anywhere, right? They're made from recycled and spent barley, so that it actually turns into biofood. If it ever finds its way into a waterway and or in landfill. So we've seen that. We've also seen a lot of people looking to pivot actually back into container board, to get out of plastic packaging altogether, maybe reduce their label footprint and go into a container board that they know is compostable, recyclable, maybe even has post-consumer content. And so we've been working with folks to try to improve, to be able to do variable inkjet imaging so we can do short runs in those formats. So again, again, it has to be consistent though with that brewer's brand image. If that's part of who they are, it's part of their DNA, then that's where we see them really readily accept that.
Now, Greg, you just mentioned, talk about
we've got a few clients who are certified B Corp.
No, that's fantastic. So like during this pandemic, brewers have struggled. We all know that everybody's had these challenges, but hopefully so many have pivoted to, more packaging and to get their product out there to the consumers. But early in the pandemic, brewers were really just looking for relationships with their partners because they didn't know what was going on. How did the four of you provide those extra values to your customers that you work with to help them get through the pandemic? Did you put out educational content? Did you reach out a little more frequently than usual? How did you kind of stay in touch to let them know that you care about them as not just a company, but as a person?
So we tried to early on have internal meetings we had internal meetings every day sharing what we knew. And then especially as the first round of PPP funds came available, what we realized was what we knew about that just because of who we are as a company. Not every one of our customers had that same knowledge base. So what we did was we decided to share all that learning we had in terms of getting after PPP funding so that we could make sure all of our customers could apply. And so I would like to think it was an invaluable service because, again, some of these folks either didn't have the time or quite candidly didn't have the interest in learning all the intricacies and the nuances, or we had a staff of folks, that's what they were doing. And then we were able to disseminate and share that information. And, hopefully, again, the tail of the tape will be, a couple years down the line, and we've been able to help some of our customers stay in the game because they were able to apply and get that funding maybe a little quicker, faster, at least know what they were up against.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll build on that. I think you touched on something that was important is communication. I mean, wherever we had information that we thought was relevant and worthy of sharing, right, where others were pivoting in the marketplace, packaging needs that could be solved, we were trying to get out in front of it. And, if we had to do a mass mailer or something, or we had to communicate with our customer base, we did that. We obviously have feet on the street, but, we had feet in offices. So, we were asking our team to reach out, right? Just make personal connections, right? Stay in touch. It was really communication, right? We tried to stay as close and I guess as present as possible in the marketplace to help out where we could.
Yeah, and I would echo that sentiment. I think the term that probably helped us the most was frequency. A frequency of more blogs, frequency of more LinkedIn updates, frequency of more communications, and knowing that we're all going through this together and having that sense of, hey, we care about your business. And so having that frequency really helped for us.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. Those are the exact responses I wanted to hear because they went outside your typical scope of what you normally do.
For us, it was very similar to.
Joel, I think there's a slight lag on your end, but go ahead.
Yeah, for us, it's very similar to everyone else. It's just it didn't change too much because we've always prided ourselves in terms of our communications with our clients and having close contact with them. It usually function on the schedule that they're comfortable with. So if we have a client who's used to hearing from us twice a week, well, we maintained and made sure everyone felt that we were there if they needed. Those that would expect to hear us from us, or want it every 2-3 months. Well, we checked in a little bit quicker to say, okay, is everything good? If everything's good, okay, and just continued I guess what we consider good practices that we had already started long before the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. And as we talked about earlier, a lot of breweries had never gotten into packaging in a high level prior to this. When those breweries would reach out to the four of you, were there those common questions that you received over and over again from multiple new clients, or are there any just general tips that you would give to brewers first getting into packaging? I mean, just low level stuff, just packaging 101. What are those questions and tips you would offer back? I know we talked a lot about consistency, and that's absolutely vital.
I don't know that we found as much. I'll say maybe the incubation level, but it was more the pivot side. Many of obviously our customers, they were in packaging to some degree. It was really helping them kind of manage through that pivot phase, right? If somebody was in glass, right, and perhaps glass was unavailable, pivot to cans. If they were in printed cans and availability became tight, how do you pivot to a bright? And then, okay, what are the resources necessary to either sleeve those cans, put a printed label on those? What options are available? It was really, we found more in that pivot as opposed to the incubation ground up side.
Yeah, it was more of a level of magnitude. I think to echo on what Mike said, they were in it in a small way. It was the package formats were always there. It's just now all of a sudden, all the bright tanks had to go into another format, right? And so they had to pick up their magnitude level.
Correct.
Yeah, Greg, I think you mentioned it earlier. We try steering customers, especially the smaller craft breweries, to really look at more on-demand solutions. And there's printing systems out there now that are desktop type printers that are in the label industry. That's very easy to operate. But again, going back to digital, we were, I think that was more of the advice that we were trying to give is if you're ordering big batches before, we may need to scale down, and there's more options out there for them.
With regard to packaging size, I know a lot of small brewers and small tap rooms, we were talking one off air, a lot of those really popular breweries will put out 4-packs every Saturday. People have a line out the door to buy these limited releases.
Yeah.
Do you foresee the trend to continue for breweries to continue to put out those, say, 4-packs of limited edition releases, or do you see more of a transition to larger packaging formats like 12-packs over time?
Well, a lot of the breweries that we have, our customer base, they got into a lot of stouts. They got into a little higher alcohol content items, and so they were actually, because of where, quite candidly, the cost of packaging, especially aluminum, has gone up. They've had to make sure that whatever they were putting in that vessel was worth a lot more money, and so they've upgraded their alcohol level, and so we're seeing a 4-pack, $12 and $16 because they're trying to make it so that it's something worthwhile for the customer to have, and so we actually would expect to see, at least in the short term here, customers are going to try to, as much as can, almost kind of carve out a premium niche level as opposed to having just a commodity lineup of of beers, especially, but stouts and imperial IPAs and maybe some signature flagship brands that they can sell in smaller quantities, but maybe in a 16-ounce format in a 4-pack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think another interesting, I'll say, evolution as the lines get blurred between brewers, vintners, distillers, et cetera, right, continue to blur. We're seeing some expansion of brewers into distilling categories. As Greg said, right, you only have so much energy, and you need some return on that energy, if you will. So whether you're packaging a beer or you're packaging some higher end, perhaps higher alcohol product that perhaps has a different return, we are seeing some evolution there where those lines are crossing, and your traditional brewers are branching out beyond just beer. We've seen kind of the wine kind of beer mixes, but now we're seeing them even reach out and distill and expand into other product categories as well.
And Andrew, I think we are starting to we live in a mix and match world, right? And that's where craft breweries, I think, really shine, is they have the opportunity for all these varieties for people to try. And so in my experience is, that 4-6-pack, I think, is still going to sustain itself because of that.
I would go even one.
Yeah. Go ahead, Joel.
I was going to go even one step beyond, which is that I think there's a generation that has an expectation of things to be flipped over and changed and to have new varieties and new things to try on a very regular basis. We've seen that for literally the last couple of years, and I think that's going to continue, whether it ends up being 4-packs or other sizes. You know, we've had some that have said, okay, we want to do one large size, do a 750. You know, so it really depends on the market, but if the market's demanding change and variety, it's going to continue to happen.
And Harrison, I'd like to come back to you for a moment. You deal with so much of labels and the marketing side of the industry. You know, everyone obviously has to make a very high quality product these days because you're not going to survive without. But absolutely, how valuable is marketing in the big picture? You know, that label art and everything you're helping with. How valuable is that?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical. I mean, the whole branding strategy, you know, the labels are really kind of the byproduct of the whole branding strategy and marketing message. And so I think the label has to reflect, you know, what that message is going to look and feel like. And so, yeah, marketing is absolutely critical in a space much like the wine industry. You look down the wine aisle. I mean, look at how many varieties that you can choose from. And again, people are noticing, you know, that message and that byproduct, which is the label, to make those consumer choices. So, yeah. From the website all the way through. I think we talked about this earlier, having that consistent message and then backing that up with a great product is absolutely everything.
Yeah. Well, I think you touched on it.
And take that a step further, Harrison, which is that, you know, for someone who has no ability to find out about a given product, has, you know, no information in front of them instantaneously. Obviously, in this world, you usually can get some info. But if you don't know, the first impression is that package, whether it's a combination of the label, the shape of the bottle, the can. That's what gives that person, that buyer, that first shot at it. So that the package and the branding can get you and help you get that first sale if someone doesn't really have background information on the product inside. What goes inside, that's what guarantees you the repeats and gets you that customer back to try other products that you have.
That's right. And that's why you start to see, you know, in a lot of consumer products, foils or, you know, metallized, you know, that really attracts the eye and it just draws people, you know, to that particular product.
And with regard to packaging, do any of you have any unique case studies where you look at a brewery's packaging that might have been a tad dated, a tad not up to par where it should have been, and then they rebranded or repackaged and saw the increase in sales because of simply the packaging alone? Or hypothetically, what would you think the value would be?
Well, I think during the pandemic, I think we saw a lot of brewers thin their herd. You know, where they may have had several beers in the stable because they didn't have to make an investment. Now, because they had to, you know, fairly quickly pivot, they had to select, here's my kind of good, better, best strategy, or here's the three workhorses I'm going with, and here's my seasonal, and that's all I'm putting in. So we actually saw a lot of brewers kind of thin out their herd and focus on the brands that were really, you know, popular.
Flagships.
Yeah, exactly. That they didn't have to, you know, because again, they're quite candid, they're still fighting for their survival, right? And so you don't have a lot of opportunity to experiment, and you may, you know, leave that experiment for when, you know, we're in a post-COVID world, whenever that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think having more, you know, personalized messaging on any product is critical in this day and age, especially with, you know, the generation of consumers coming up. You know, they want to see their name. They want to see a personal message on that package. And so I know that other breweries in the past have done some of that, and I felt, you know, very innovative. And I think that will continue as well.
Yeah, we've seen everything from QR codes to embedded virtual reality platforms built into it.
No, great mention there of the QR codes, Joel. We had a conversation yesterday here in Craft Beer Professionals. We're partnering with Hope for the Day. There's an organization that draws awareness to mental health in the craft beer industry. And we're launching a beer called The Things We Don't Say IPA. It's a craft beer for mental health. And on the side of the can, there's a QR code that anyone who could scan it, it'll go to a resource directory of places you can get help if you want to talk to someone about mental health and just general awareness. So QR code is something we really can't get rid of, something we didn't know of a year ago. Besides, you know, it's a technological myth that we'd always heard would be the next big thing, and it kind of became the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But looking at the industry and where we are as a whole, let's kind of grab that crystal ball and look into the future. I'm not going to say 12 months from now, just in the future at some better point in the industry. What are the projections that the four of you have for the ways we're going to change packaging, or the way it's going to grow, it's going to better, or just differences we may see?
I think reducing carbon footprint, that is definitely going to continue. Joel mentioned the whole recyclability and being more environmentally conscious. There's no question that train is heading down the tracks. But again, I think going back to my messaging of personalized consumer experiences, interactive consumer experiences, I think that's going to continue to happen as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think the expansion of the I'll call it the 19 crimes for packaging, right? So you get that QR code. I do believe that's still on the horizon, because again, everyone's trying to get an immersive experience and really feel like they've drawn an association. And so I know that there's a lot of craft brew, beverage producers out there. That's absolutely what they're after. So I agree with Harrison that they're looking for that one-to-one marketing and drawing that personal connection with their consumer.
Yep. I'll say short term, and when I say short term, maybe the next 1 to 3 years, just because of the tightness in the marketplace. I think what you'll find is traditionally beverage companies would choose to differentiate with shape of container, particularly in glass, but I think you'll see a little bit less of that in the short term, where they're using other methods, the labeling and or some ad, as Greg pointed out, maybe they're using the pack tack and some secondary feature, maybe they're putting a flag on it, etc. They're going to find other ways to stand out, other than the primary package itself, because with the primary packaging being a bit scarce right now and limited availability, I think you'll see a focus on availability of the package, make sure I have that. I'll differentiate with how I decorate it and what I do to it after that to connect to my brand. As we all know, there's nobody more passionate about their brand than these brewers, right? And rightfully so, put a lot of soul into it. And, I'm sure we'll continue to see innovation in that space, but I think it's going to be around something other than the primary package.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Michael that short term, that's what we're looking at. Long term, I think, especially when you talk about breweries and some of the bigger distilleries, there's a lot of experimentation that's going on currently on paper bottles, which is looking to be promising, with big announcements by people like Carlsberg and Diageo recently. And it will not be surprising to me that within the next 18 months, maybe a touch more, that you're going to actually see mass production of these items every day, and you'll see it in stores. So it'll tie into their marketing campaign to promote their environmental friendliness, as well as engaging consumers who are seemingly more interested in this at this point in time.
And that's all fantastic insight. I think one big takeaway is that packaging is a huge portion of a brand's overall identity, and it should not be neglected. In the four of you, I really appreciate you sharing your insight. I'm excited for the event that brought us all together in the first place. We've got the Craft Beverage Expo, the 9th and the 10th of March. So that's going to be here before we know it, virtually, of course. But I can't wait to meet some great people. I can't wait to present. I'm sure you four are looking forward to it as well. But more importantly, I'm looking forward to better times where we can share beers together. And, it'll be interesting to see if your projections are right for the next few years, and only time will tell. So Greg, Joel, Harrison, and Mike, it's been a pleasure getting to know you guys today. Enjoy the rest of your day. Joel, hope you get to enjoy a little time on the slopes. Everybody else, it's been an absolute pleasure. So talk to you later, everybody.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, everyone.